Hello, all you hardcores out there. How you doing? It's Russ here from Poker's Corner, biggest gob in sport. We're just waiting for Julian to click in. So, lots to get through. Hello, Julian. How you doing?
Not bad, mate. How yourself?
I'm all right. Lot to get through. We'll start with Dylan White.
I'm looking at him now.
Well, yeah, go on.
No, I'm saying I'm looking at him now. You've got your thumbnail. You've got AJ and Dillian.
Yeah. August 12th. What do you think?
Is that confirmed or is that been kind of?
Michael Benson, isn't it? Eddie's mouthpiece, isn't he?
Well, look, if you're Dillian White, you're Anthony Joshua, and you're Eddie Hearn, this makes complete sense, doesn't it? It's a big fight for DAZN,
Yeah.
no doubt. It'll be pay-per-view, which is obviously the deal what they wanted anyway.
Yeah.
Anthony Joshua still needs a bit more time with another trainer, according to him, and that makes sense as well. Dillian White's not really a step up from Franklin because he barely scraped by him anyway, so it's kind of another fight that can get under his belt to build his confidence and get rid of that horrible inactivity that's plagued him the last few years, that plagues them all. Makes Eddie a ton of cash, and Dillian White, he's kind of shaking around right now, isn't he? He's piling the pounds on, and he's probably after one or two big paydays, and then he'll sail off into the sunset and say, I'm a multi-millionaire, I've had a good career, and I've fought a few big names, and this fight ticks a lot of boxes, Russell.
It's his 8th pay-per-view, isn't it? White.
People recognise him as a big name and a big star.
For what? For doing what?
I find it bizarre. I always have done, as you know. I've always found him in old money, probably a European level heavyweight. If he'd have been, I always go back to those days, but in old money, it would have been a European level heavyweight, Luisian Rodriguez type fighter, that level. But because of the landscape of boxing now, you can make a massive amount of money for having a big personality, a big mouth, and having a decent punch.
Yeah. Saudi. What if the money's not there? And also, whatever happened to Wembley being the Holy Grail? How's that not the Holy Grail now anymore? I mean,
well, it's that saying, isn't it? It's only for the fans if I can't get a visa into the US or there isn't a big pot of cash somewhere else who's wanting to stage the fight, then it's for the fans. But look,
what, in the UK, you mean?
Yeah, I've said this 1,000 times, right? I got no issue with these guys trying to get as much money as they can, fighting wherever they can, and trying to limit the damage that these guys are getting on the brain cells, basically on the brains. But it's when they say it's for the fans and it's for the British public, we all know it's a load of rubbish because, for one thing, they don't even charge ticket prices what most fans can afford, do they? Remember Julio Cesar Chavez used to have all those massive fights in the bull ring, and they used to charge like $10, $20, really affordable.
137,000, weren't they?
Yeah, and they used to charge really small amounts of money for the people who truly wanted to see a living legend. So with Chavez, it was for the fans. But with these guys, it's not for the fans, it's for the bank balance. They want to be rich beyond the wildest dreams, and I get it. But then again, what are they going to do? They're going to turn around and say, I'm just in it for the cash because I'm a greedy so-and-so. It is what it is.
Yeah. Furies, we're now on to like 13 names in the last couple of months that have been associated with his name. And do you think it's just lip service now and he just wants a break from boxing?
I think Tyson Fury is in a really difficult situation in himself because he's become his own worst enemy. He's got to the stage now where you can see. So Frank Warren, for example, I've caught a couple of Frank Warren things where he's been attacking Eddie Hearn and he's attacking everybody. So Frank Warren, uncharacteristically now, is losing his rag defending Fury.
Yeah,
and I think he's doing it because he knows he can't defend him and he's embarrassed by Tyson Fury being effectively impossible to deal with right now. I think Fury's ego since he knocked out Wilder in that third fight, and people talking about it being one of the greatest fights of all time. And what did he get, like 20 million or something? I think his ego's just gone beyond anything now, and he believes he's the greatest of all time. His fans believe he's the greatest of all time, and I think he feels he should get paid accordingly. But the problem is, we've said this before, haven't we? The top 10 heavyweights now, or certainly the top 6 or 7 heavyweights, won't get out of bed for less than 4 or 5 million. So the amount of money that Fury wants, the fact that he can't go to the US, the fact that the Saudi money's not been there for him so far, that puts, it's a situation where how are they going to pay a heavyweight 7-8 million, you know, or even more than that if they're a big name. So they're looking at scraping the bottom of the division, trying to get someone in who will take 2 or 3 million, because the maths just don't add up. Fury doesn't even want 70-30 now, does he? I think he's just, I remember when I said at the time, and I got a lot of hate for it, and I said the Fury-Usyk fight wouldn't happen in April. Remember that?
Yeah.
And I read some good stuff on that, and there was a guy, I forget his name, who broke it down. He broke the finances down, and he said, if you look at what that cash that fight would generate and how much Tyson Fury is asking for, his opponent couldn't even box for free, because Fury wants that much money now to fight.
Yeah.
There's not the money there. So he's in a situation now where, I mean, do you ever hear of anything? You've never heard this in your life. So champions now effectively try to avoid mandatories, or mandatories are considered a nuisance, aren't they? And
Yeah.
Tyson Fury's in a situation now where he's dying for a mandatory, because that means someone has to fight him, because nobody else wants to sit down at the negotiating table and deal with the Furies and be belittled and offered peanuts. So Fury's like, oh God, WBC, please mandate somebody, because I'm a champion without a fight. But he's done it to himself. He absolutely has done it to himself. Eddie Hearn and AJ, look, those guys are no angels, right? They're not the easiest people to deal with. Hearn will want the terms and conditions in his favour. But you start to wonder when you look back now at various things. What do we always talk about? What's the common denominator? Couldn't do the Usyk fight. They couldn't do the AJ fight 2 or 3 times. They couldn't do this fight. They couldn't do that fight. And then said, oh, Andy Ruiz is asking for crazy money, 20 million.
Not true, that apparently. Apparently it's not true.
I don't believe it for 1 minute, Russell. And I think, what's the common denominator? And then, as I've said before, you only have to look at Fury, and the guy's fighting his mates. He's fighting people for the 3rd time. And he's not really capitalized on what I mentioned before, that fantastic knockout over Deontay Wilder, the 3rd fight. He hasn't, well, what has he done since then? Let's be honest.
Has he been clipped in that fight and thought, do you know what? I don't want to be clipped like that again.
Well, I think we might talk
Styles
about
had to change, hasn't it? His style's changed, hasn't it?
You've heard me 1,000 times, right? I obsess with fighters being active. It's the most important thing. And what we saw last night, we don't need to go into it, but we saw Josh Taylor against the brilliant Teofimo Lopez. But Josh Taylor's not boxed for, what is it now, 17, 18 months? I don't know.
Yeah.
And he's been out the ring. Again, you're trying to make the weight for Josh Taylor. But he's a guy who's 32 years old, and he's been inactive. And it killed him, because when he needed to really up the pace in those 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 rounds, when that fight was looking really close, he couldn't up the pace.
He couldn't go through gears, could he?
Couldn't go through the gears, mate. He didn't have the activity in the bank. He didn't have the youth. And then you saw Lopez, who was 25-year-old, who just pulled away after the 6th round, 5th, 6th round, and Taylor couldn't do anything about it. So youth obviously generally prevails in boxing. You've got all these heavyweights coming through now. And I think, and we've talked about this before, Russell, I think Fury's legs are going. You've just said it. He's had to adapt his style, change his style to minimize and limit his movement. He's now got massive experience, but he's got so much inactivity. It's going to kill him when he's in an absolute firefight. And we saw it with Josh Taylor. It happens. I don't care how good you are, how elite you think you are. If you are not active and you are not fighting regularly in competitive fights and having camps, 2 or 3 camps back to back, when you really rise up, it kills you. I mean, what is he now? Is he 34, 35? But he's lived a lot of years in his life as Tyson Fury, hasn't he?
Coming up 35 in a couple of weeks, isn't he?
He's lived a lot of years, mate, hasn't he? You know, he's he's done a lot of things that's not really wise to do in his life. And look at the weight he put on. And he admitted he says I have problems with drugs, with alcohol, all these type of things. So he's probably a 38, 39-year-old body, to be honest, Russell, you know. Yeah. And inactivity at that age is a killer. And you know what's going to happen? I think one of the names that was, people are going to laugh at me, by the way, now. I don't care. There was a name that was thrown about, Sanchez. Have you seen Sanchez? Frank Sanchez. Young kid, fearless, fast hands. That's the last thing that Tyson Fury needs right now. And you won't see the Frank Sanchez fight because when you're aging, you stay in your lane. Yeah, Fury's the best fighter in the world, but he's aging, and a young, hungry lion, and we saw it with Josh Taylor last night, that youth is too much sometimes, mate. Too fast, too youthful. And the Frank Sanchez's of this world, you know, and the other 2 or 3 good kids who are coming through, they'll pose a threat to Tyson Fury right now. But in 12 or 18 months, he won't be able to live with those kids, mate, because you can't beat youth. You can't beat it. Larry Holmes, Ali, Joe Louis,
Larry Holmes, Tyson, Larry Holmes.
Always the same. These guys aren't good enough to beat youth, and neither's Tyson Fury. So that's going to be his undoing. Inactivity. He'll get the wrong opponent on the wrong night, and he won't be at the races, mate.
Yeah, yeah. Shane McGregor, do you think the stick he's had's unjust? Because now Coley left and he's been beat, hasn't he?
Well, the problem
Josh Taylor left him, didn't he?
You can't have it all ways. Well, you can argue Josh Taylor's gone down the pants since he left him, can't you? But you can't have it both ways. We can't say, and I've said this before as an ex-coach, sometimes the coach has an overstated role, you know, and it's the fighter who has to do the fighting, and then say, oh, you see, he's been exposed as Shane McGregor when his guys get beat. So you can't have it both ways. The coach-fighter thing is a marriage, but Shane McGregor's a fine young coach. I've been critical of him in the past, but it's just an experience. I was an experience. I made mistakes in the corner. And Shane McGregor, for example, was it the second fight with Frampton and Santa La Cruz? And his advice was poor. He was quite naive in some ways. I think there are areas of Shane McGregor's game that he needs to up. That kind of up close infighting that seems to, you know, I always talk about the infighting, working in the pocket, defending in the pocket. I think there are things that he needs to learn or round off on. But he's a good young coach, and as a young coach, he's as good as anybody. But, you know, you talk to Joe Gallagher, who we both know well, Gallagher will tell you that he still makes mistakes, but he's certainly made a lot more mistakes in his 20s and 30s than he does now. You learn the business, Russell. It's like fighters, isn't it? You get fighters who learn the business, and that's why I always used to smile when I used to listen to Eddie Futch and Larry Holmes in the corner when Larry Holmes was world champion, because you got Eddie Futch and you got Larry Holmes in the corner who will become masters, and the corner was never any panic. It was always very, very quiet. So McGregor's one of the best coaches in the UK. I don't think he's quite up there in terms of the world right now, but he's doing a good job. He's doing a good job, but you can tell a Shane McGregor fighter when you see one, just by stylistically.
Yeah. Do you think that Shane, we having his dad around him all the time, that'll rub off on him?
Well, the one thing what I would have thought would have rubbed off on Shane is I've just said he doesn't really have that infighting. He doesn't seem to teach that infighting. I don't think so. Anyway, his fighters always miss that up close range. And his dad was the absolute master, wasn't he? Barry McGregor in his day, up close.
Yeah.
Close to range was frightening. So I always wonder why Barry, I don't know what input he has in the gym, or if he's more the business side of it. But I like Barry McGregor. I once was fortunate enough to have a real good long conversation with him on the phone one Saturday morning, talking about sparring and stuff. And Barry's a wealth of experience. He likes the money, doesn't everybody? Everybody's entitled to a piece of the pie. But I always wonder if Shane does listen to his dad, and if he doesn't, perhaps he should do, because you got a guy there who's been there and done it.
Yeah. I want to ask you this. I've spoken about this before. Roberto Smith. Terry O'Connor being the referee and judge in the English title fight. Tyson Fury against John McDermott. Terry O'Connor were knocked out by Stan McDermott, 1977, Royal Albert Hall, December. So
Yeah.
I was he a ref? Now they said it was a clerical error. Now fair enough, but O'Connor would have known going into the ring, wouldn't he, that it's Stan's lad. You think?
They can do what they want. I mean, you can set your watch by these guys. You know, you watch a UK fight or you watch a title fight. You know, you get the British referee when you've got a British champion or a British fighter and an overseas opponent. I don't know who they've got coming through actually, but I'm sick of seeing the same faces all the time. It's the same judges, the same referees. But you're supposed to be neutral, aren't you? You're supposed to be absolutely neutral in all fights, not just championship fights, but in all fights. But as you've said, the O'Connors and these guys, I've been critical of them, but who are the officials coming through right now? You know, who are the new people coming through? It's the same people. Or I mean, I saw Howard Foster last night. You know, not saying he's a bad referee, but Howard Foster turned up, and it's the same people all the time, mate. Steve Gray, same people all the time.
Yeah. Which brings me to, if that had been, you know, like George Groves Froch, if Howard Foster had been knocked out by George Groves' dad, and that come out after Froch Grove, that'd be massive, wouldn't it?
Yeah, it absolutely would do, wouldn't it? And that's the thing is, you know, it's really bad at amateur level when you go to. I've had kids who are boxing amateur shows, and because got limited resource, sometimes you get the kid who's fighting's mum is one of the judges. This actually does happen. I've had this quite a few times, generally in the Northeast for some reason. You get shows where, like I say, club officials from that home show are scoring judges, and in some cases the referees. So you'd expect at basic schoolboy level, sometimes with limited resource, this happens. But when this happens in big fights, you just don't expect that, dear. I've said this, you know, you've heard me say this 1,000 times. The British Boxing Board of Control always remind me of this present government. There are kind of parallels between the government and the Board of Control. They're almost like do what they like, self-regulating, and they only answer to themselves. So if they have a review, they have an internal review. You know, things such as that. They never have an independent.
Like a meeting.
Yeah. I mean, you know, anywhere else you can get audited, can't you? If you're a world body, you can get audited. You know, athletics can get audited, but the British Boxing Board of Control, whenever they have an audit or they have a review, they do it themselves. It's like the Jack Catterall fight, isn't it, with Josh Taylor? Yeah. They held their own review. I mean, how can you expect impartiality and objectivity when you're holding your own reviews? It's a joke.
Yeah. We're down to 3 full world champions: Tyson Fury, WBC, Sonny Edwards, IBF, that's flyweight, and Billum Smith, WBO cruiser. Obviously Tyson's heavyweight. There's Lee Wood, regular belt, WBA, Maxi Hughes, IBO, if people want to count them. And we're talking about fights like Joshua and Dylan White. There's no belt. They weren't world champions.
It's just times are, you know, I'm not going to say boxing's dead. Whenever I say that, you get criticised and people.
Well, Tyson's not fighting, is he? Right? Sonny Edwards flyweight. You know, multi-skill. He's like, his skills are like in that Bruce Lee film. Your skills are extraordinary. He says, well, his skills are like that, aren't they, Sonny Edwards? Let's have it right. He's like,
unbelievable skill set. Unbelievable.
Hold on, imagine if it's some pop in his punches. It'd be a nightmare, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
So there's the touting him as pound for pound. They might even be right at the moment, but is that it? Where's world champions? We've got more women world champions. Ellie Scott and Chantel Cameron.
Yeah, Ellie Scott was great last night.
Hughes and Sandy Ryan. There's more world champions at women. doing it in an handful of fights than that it's men. What's happening?
It's just poor, isn't it? I don't know if it's purely because fighters, you know, big domestic 50-50 fights are happening, and because we're not competitive against each other, then people aren't really getting that grounding and that schooling, are they? And going through domestic level, European level, Commonwealth, etc., and then fringe world class. So we're getting fighters who might win a version, like you've just named, you know, the male champions. They might win a version of a world title, but they're not holding on to it, are they? They're not making 7, 8, 9, 10 defenses because they're not ready. And this is what I said about
Not
AJ.
over about. Either this generation don't over about, do they?
No, they're not fully developed, and they come up against styles that they haven't seen before, and they're getting turned over. And you mentioned Sonny Edwards. It's just such a shame, isn't it? Because I don't care what anybody says last night, and I've met Sonny, and Grant Smith, his coach, is a friend of mine. I know Grant well, but Sonny Edwards, there was no noise, there was no atmosphere when he came out. It was quiet. There was polite applause. There was a bit of noise in a couple of moments in the fight, but generally you got Campos and Sonny Edwards in a brilliant fight, and there's no appreciation of that quality. People just want big personalities, but the big personalities like the ones I'm looking at right now, they win versions of world titles, but they're never truly the best in division. They never truly become rounded fighters.
So have they conned us then, Joshua and White? Because Joshua's in what is, I don't know, 13th or something, or 14th, whatever, for pay-per-view. He's had 8. They've had millions and millions of pounds, these two. Millions. They've had it
Well,
all.
what's happened now is there's a path, isn't there? In heavyweight boxing, there's a path to make as much money as you can, and you can be relatively limited in a global sense and make a crap load, absolute stash of the cash. And I think, are they wrong to do that? I don't know, because I've said before, Dillian Whyte, I never believed he was an elite fighter, ever. I mean, Povetkin put him unconscious, didn't he? This is an old man who was 6 years past his best, laid him out unconscious. He never even landed a shot against Tyson Fury. His attempt at heavyweight championship boxing was embarrassing. It was absolutely embarrassing. And then you got AJ, who's been guided so carefully and so well and got people at the right time. But as I've just said, when he came up against various styles, he was absolutely found wanting. So I don't know who these fighters are coming through, but it's all about development. I always talk about development, and you got to develop fighters. Like I saw Chev Clark last night. I mean, he looks absolutely unbelievable right now.
Yeah.
In terms of cruiserweights. And Eddie Hearn said something last night, and I generally scoff at this. Eddie Hearn says, I think he could beat Billum Smith right now. And you know what? So do I.
Yeah.
But let's see how he's guided.
Billum Smith's a world champion, but he'd get beat at domestic level. He already has been beat at domestic level, hasn't he? Right, so he's world champion. Fury's not defending his belt. And his CV, he's got Wilder and Vladimir on it. That's it, really. So he's, and Steve Cunningham, he's not active. And Sonny's willing to fight best and be undisputed, isn't there? So he's flying flag, basically, Sonny Edwards.
Sonny Edwards, if he can get those unification fights and they can get the money together, and he does, and I do think he's got more in the tool set than we saw last night. It was quite a competitive fight, but he won the majority of the rounds by just enough to make it look big on points. But it wasn't at his best, and I think probably because the risk wasn't there. But if Sonny Edwards unifies, will anybody even care? And that's such a shame,
Yeah.
And I don't know what kind of money he's earning, but whatever Sonny Edwards is earning, it's still not enough.
Oh, for his skill set, you mean?
Oh, for his skill set, he should be like multimillionaire.
And his brother, the skill sets are off the charts.
Him and Charlie Edwards are unbelievable fighters, but it's the born not big guys, aren't they? And it's just it is where it is.
Would you put it past Eddie trying to get both of them in ring because they fell out, both of Edwards' brothers?
Oh,
doing something off cuff.
I always wonder about that. I think
people keep asking me, that
if it's genuine. Listen, while there's unifications out there, there's no way that Sonny.
Eddie would love that though, wouldn't he? On This Morning with Richard and Judy or whoever it is. wouldn't he?
Well, that might be what he does, Russell, when there's nothing else for Sonny Edwards. If Sonny Edwards doesn't unify and gets beat, then he might even look at something like that, the sibling fight. But I hope not. I just would hate to see family fight. I think it's gross. I think it's
If
horrible.
somebody got injured, the promoter would have to run for the hills, wouldn't he?
Yeah, truthfully, I can't see anybody touching that fight. I just can't. I hope not.
Yeah.
And as well, the family. They've got to live with that then, and
Yeah.
it divides the whole family. It's not a good thing to talk about.
Unless they have a move around and say stuff the promoters.
That'd be the best way of doing it, like Apollo and Rocky at the end of Rocky 3, where the camera's out there. Just have a little ding dong.
Yeah. So we're a bit limited for world champions. All right. Carl Froch, Hall of Fame, is there this weekend, Julian?
Right, just ignore the background. George always likes to bark, mate. Joe's takeaway has been delivered. Thanks, Joe. Yep, so that'll be an absolute brilliant weekend. Always sticks in my memory. I don't know, spoil Carl Froch's moment, but when Joe Calzaghe was at the Hall of Fame and his dad was there, and Enzo was just sobbing, it meant so much to him, didn't it? It's such a brilliant thing to be, canister to New York. I'd love to go to that one year. I said that to Anna. I said, at some point, I'm going to go to the Hall of Fame, but it needs to be a fighter who I really, really love, to go there and watch that. But brilliant moment for Carl, brilliant for his family. Once you're in the Hall of Fame, you're in the Hall of Fame, aren't you? And that's ultimately, he's not someone who's just talking about legacy and paying lip service to it. He was somebody who had legacy. And I think I'd like to think that Josh Taylor might get in there at some point when his career's over, because, he got beat last night. But if you look at Josh Taylor's record as well, he's got some really good opponents in there. Josh Taylor's a future Hall of Famer for me.
Would you say Callum Smith's an Hall of Famer?
No, not a chance, no.
No?
God, no.
No?
No, I mean, that's not disrespecting Callum Smith, but you got to have, well, the best way of answering that, and I'm just speaking as a find, I like the Smiths. All. Who has Callum Smith beat who was an elite light heavyweight?
Or super middle?
Or super midweight, elite.
Groves?
Was Groves really ever elite?
Well, they were over middle then, one, I suppose.
And my version of elite might be different to somebody else's. When I talk elite, I'm talking someone who's been one of the 2 or 3 best fighters in the division for a set period of 2 years, 3 years, 4 years.
Like a Booty.
Yeah, not somebody who's just had a WBA regular belt or something and had a soft win to get.
Groves had a full belt though, didn't
he? He did, but this is just a situation with the belts. I'm not downing Groves. I don't consider Groves elite. And what do I mean when I don't think someone's elite? I guess what I mean is when a fighter steps up against elite, and every time they're up against someone who's elite, they get beat, then they are not elite. That's my definition.
Right.
And again, repeat the question. Who was Groves beat? Who was absolutely elite?
Well, Callum Smith's not going to get your vote then in years to come then when the people have nominated him.
Callum Smith's a fabulous fighter. I might change that point of view. If he beats Beterbiev and does a number on him, then he's got that tick against his name, hasn't he?
Yeah.
And he was in the Muhammad Ali Trophy. I don't want to underestimate him, but I just look at certain fighters and you look at the careers, like I don't. Not for me. Well, I'll tell you what. That Canelo Alvarez is a really good fighter, but Canelo Alvarez absolutely took him to pieces, didn't he?
Yeah. It is.
Took him to pieces. He just picked him apart. It was like sparring for Alvarez.
The Gad and Simon Jordan, they had Bricktop on Talk Sport, and it looked like they filled the nappies and Bricktop, put it on them.
I've not seen it because there's something about, I like Simon Jordan, but I'm getting a bit tired of him, if I'm being honest. I thought Eddie Hearn did a complete number on him when they had their little four-parter. Thought Eddie Hearn made him look really bad. That was my view. If Eddie Hearn against Simon Jordan was a championship fight, Simon Jordan would have been stopped in about 5 rounds. I thought he got well beat. He was too emotional in that fight. The GAD has got to be careful who cuts him off. It's all about access, isn't it? And he's doing a massive U-turn on Conor Benn now, isn't he, the GAD? So I didn't see Frank.
Yeah, he is, yeah.
I didn't see Frank Warren there, but I just saw some clickbait headlines, and Warren looks really angry, and he'll get to a situation where if you keep being annoying to me, you guys, I won't come on. And TalkSport is only as big as the guests that they have on there. And it's like anything. And I've said the same to you. Sometimes you do have to dumb down a little bit, depending on who you're speaking to. I get it. I get it. We've all got, mortgages to pay. We all need to put steam on the table. And maybe there was some diplomacy there from Simon Jordan with the Warren interview. I've not seen it. But I think whereas Gareth A. Davies, I view him completely different. I think he's a fun character. He knows elements of boxing, but Gareth A. Davies gets brave when he's not in front of somebody. And then the minute he's in front of somebody, he does U-turns that, are just ridiculous, actually. And he just backs out of everything he's ever said. And he did it with Conor Benn.
When Conor Benn put it on him, he crawled up Conor Benn's rear end, mate, and he's still up there looking for a way out. He's lost. I
never defend Conor Benn. You know what I think about Conor Benn, but I think Conor
Benn put it on him.
Yeah, Conor Benn was right to do that and to push the microphone away. He's like, hang on a minute, you've done nothing but rip me to pieces and make, like underlying comments and try and, this and that. That's all you've done for months and months. There's been a witch hunt. Witch hunt is a wrong word, but you've been very public, you guys, on TalkSport about me. Don't expect me to give you views by having an interview with you. Yeah, I think he's a cheat, but that's irrelevant. And the GAD was embarrassing. And at some point, Conor Benn's going to be boxing, and the GAD is going to be down on his knees, groveling for access. And I didn't mean it. And then there'll be this public relations thing where the GAD and Conor Benn are they have a hug and they embrace.
Well, they go for a cheeky Nando's.
They'll do that, man. Deep down, Conor Benn will be thinking, "You dickhead, you threw me under the bus."
But we need him on board on our side.
But we need him because he's the press. He's got a powerful pen, and that's what I hate. And that's I think you do. It's the fakeness. I hate fakeness. It's nothing worse.
Yeah. Big John Fury the movie. It's in talks. What do you think?
He's led an interesting life, and if you listen to John Fury, he's led a massively interesting life.
Who do you think will play the Irish 1992 bare knuckle champion?
The Invisible Man, probably.
Pop, pop, bang!
Didn't exist, did he?
What about any of these 100 from Planet Orbit? Are they going to come down? And
said before, John Fury, tough guy, clearly ex-pro fighter, beating with some good fighters. Have gum shield, will travel. No issue with that. He's 6'4", he's 20 stone. He'd be an intimidating guy, but 100-0. I mean, he's just. Well, it's a clean record, actually. It's a nice number, isn't it? 100-0, all KOs, and they were all no rules. So it was mixed martial arts before.
100 grand.
100 grand's a lot of money when you look at the fights now. There's
you can't remember his name.
Well, if you look how big the Dekahegi Dougie Joyce fight might be, if
they're going to get at it, aren't they? It's massive, that, isn't it now?
Massive, and they were talking 40 grand. And now this, so this is 40 grand today. So 1992, 1993, John Fury, 100 grand. What's that? The equivalent of that with inflation? £500,000 bare knuckle fight.
Yeah.
Back in the day, 100 grand back in the day.
Can't
And
remember the man's name.
but yet Dougie Joyce and Decker Heggie are gonna maybe split 40 grand if Decker can come up with the money, and if his injuries heal or whatever, and that's 100 grand. No, I'm not buying that, mate.
We're not buying it, Big John. Stop telling whoppers, man.
Listen, if John Fury got hold of me one night, I'd shit myself. I don't deny it, but he's a big guy. But I'd still say to him to his face, I still don't believe he'd 100 bare knuckle fights, mate.
Listen, mate, I've got padlocks on inside the bedroom door.
Oh, I won't want him knocking on my door. And you know what? The thing with John Fury.
You know, Big John Fury don't knock on doors. He just kicks them down. He huffs and puffs and blows your house away.
John Fury, though, to be fair, he's one of those guys, like I said to you before,
Right.
about he's one of I think he's brilliant to listen to. He was unbelievable. The Tommy Fury, Jake Paul fight week. He was like, you just wanted to watch him. He made the atmosphere, and it was brilliant, was John Fury. But I guess people get carried away, don't they? It's like, I know people who fabricate amateur records or professional records, and every time you talk to them, it changes. I had 15 fights, you know, Jules, did you? Yeah. 2 years later, I had 28 fights, won national title. You know, 5 years later, you speak to the same person, they're Olympic gold medalist. Not on Google, of course. And people, they fabricate it because they get the taste of being known for being something cool, pretty cool, which has been a tough man. Everybody wants to be known to either be a Premiership footballer, a professional prize fighter, or a rock star. Doesn't anybody want to do that?
Does
But come
anybody
on,
want to be a postman?
no one wants to be a postman, mate, and no one wants to be working greeting cards like
Coal
I do.
miner.
Yeah, it's just some things aren't sexy, mate, are they? But just be real, keep it real. Don't tell lies, or don't stretch truths.
Don't tell us MI5 are watching you from the moon.
No, but he's a great character. I think he's brilliant.
Yeah, he's a scary, scary guy. Because you know that leper in Loft? I'm in. He's a crank, mate. At the end of the day, the man's a crank. You know what I mean?
So I think we've about 2.5 minutes to go, Russell. Anything else, mate?
No, that's it, mate. Listen, you take care. Peace out. Have a great Sunday.
Thank you, buddy. Speak soon, Russell. Soon in person. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, buddy.
Right. Anybody who's interested in earning a few quid on your social medias, get in touch. PokeyCorner@mail.com. I'll explain how it works. And you got to pin a few links on your socials. You do it every day, don't you? Just like you share Pokey's videos every day on your WhatsApp. Thank you very much for liking and subscribing and leaving a comment. Peace out.